My name is Donald Albrecht. I'm the Museum of the City of New York's Curator of Architecture and Design, and I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about the museum's building at 103rd Street and Fifth Avenue. The style of the building is called Colonial Revival, or sometimes Neo-Georgian. So in other words, those are styles that look back to the history of American architecture and design. The building was completed in 1932, in the early years of the Great Depression. In many ways, the history of the city is actually written on the facade of the building. The marble entranceway, for example, was inspired by the portico of the old Federal Hall where George Washington took the oath of office when he became President of the United States. The other part of the facade of the building that gives it the Colonial Revival or Neo-Georgian appearance is the beautiful red brick, the white windows that have multiple panes of glass, and the pediments throughout the building. The interesting part about the Colonial Revival architecture at the early part of the 1930s is that while it looked backwards to the American historical past, it also in some ways looked forward. You can see this when you come into the building. The large sweeping marble stairway, which is cantilevered actually, is a kind of almost 1930s streamlined modern touch that is very different from the outside of the building, which is more historical. At the same time, the floor patterns in strong kind of geometric black and white forms is almost kind of like the Art Deco style of buildings like the Chrysler Building. Within the context of 1920s and 1930s New York architecture, the building is also interesting because while we remember those decades as being the era of the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building, and other totally modern, forward-looking buildings, it's interesting to realize that buildings like the Museum of the City of New York, which looked largely to the past, were also being built and were a vibrant part of New York's architectural tradition during those times. The Colonial Revival style of the Museum of the City of New York was commonly used for schools and banks, any kind of building that had aspirations to civic grandeur.